Hey everyone, I'm Adrian. I'm the founder of The Proof, and I'm here with my friend Steph today.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie. I'm the founder of Levitate Foundry.
And we're here today with Anthony, founder of Standard Dose, who's also a good friend. So A, super excited to have you on. And B, if you want to give us a quick rundown of your background, and we'll let you just start Standard Dose.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So my background, I spent the past 15 years in brand and marketing, working across many different industries. Started my career in pharma, where I got to work on stress and anxiety medication, all the way through to working on beauty and fashion predominantly most of my career. During that time, I got to work on brands kind of big and small, everything from Vera Wang across all licensed products, David's Bridal up to couture line, to working on small indie brands like launching an almond nut butter into Whole Foods. And yeah, launched energize about 2.5 years ago now.
I love it. And from a kind of like walk us through team workflows perspective, what were the differences between, I guess, when you launched 2 years ago versus where you are now and how big your team is now?
Yeah, so when we launched the company, so we are a natural plant-based wellness space. We launched online in the very beginning of the business. So we started direct D2C. We had third-party brands. We had about 50 different SKUs when we first launched from many different brands. And we were purely focused on CBD as a category when we first launched. We did that strategically because there was a rise of products entering that space. And there was really no one vetting those products at that time. So no one was really looking at them to understand efficacy, how do the products work, how are they positioned? And so as a marketplace, we really wanted to provide that as well as education. So when we first launched the team, we staffed up on our editorial side so we could get some of that educational content out and our buying team and our marketing team. But operationally, we didn't really have a lot of infrastructure, right? Because we weren't making the brands, we weren't making our own private label products or anything like that. All of the products were third party. So it was really curating them, bringing them to the same place together. So the starting of the team was like one person on marketing, one person on buying, one person on fulfillment. We were pick packing and shipping from our office. It was really down and dirty. I remember when we first launched, it was like the night before launch and it was about 2 a.m. We knew we had a Vogue article coming out the next day, the day of our launch. And we didn't know if it was the Vogue article was going to come out at like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., but we knew it was coming out in the morning. And so we stayed up that whole night, me and like 4 people in our office, preparing without any expectation of like what we would do our first day in sales. And we were literally still writing copy at like 4 a.m. for the website to go live. So it was all hands on deck, but it was a very, very small team, about 4 people at the time.
Gotcha. And in terms of where you are now, like how big are you now? What do those workflows look like? How different are they?
Yeah, so very different. So today we have over 900 SKUs. So we went from 50 to 900 across many different plant categories. So our whole goal today is to heal people through plants and through experiences. So on the plant side, we have the 900 SKUs made up of over 90 different brands. And then in addition to that, we help solve issues like pain, sleep, stress, gut health, immune health. We have our own fulfillment center today where we're pick packing and shipping all of our own orders. It's a big kind of robust facility in Connecticut where we still manage our team and we still hold it close and important to us to like pick, pack, and ship our own boxes because we get to control the customer experience, ensure things don't get broken. We add additional like samples into boxes. We do things like adding mantra cards in that can help from a meditation standpoint. So we still control that. So the operations team is about 6 people now, pick, packing, and shipping boxes every day out in Connecticut. Then we have our store. We opened a retail store about 4 months after launching. So we have educators down in the store. We have a full marketing team, including growth. We do all of that internally. And we have an external agencies to help support on special projects. Then in addition to that, we have a creative team, copywriting, design, web development. We have ops team, so finance, inventory, forecasting, planning, logistics, and we have a buying team. So the team is super diverse across the board. And we're made up of 26 people now. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm curious. I'm in the like hiring stage as well, and Steph has a lot more experience than I do here. But I'm curious, from a more qualitative lens, obviously ensuring that the person has the right background for the fit. Do you have a checklist or certain criteria that you lean on, when you're looking to hire someone?
Yeah, so that's definitely evolved over time. I think one of the key things that we always look for in the beginning of a new hire, to especially where we are today in the stage of the company, is flexibility to change. being a startup, like the business is evolving and it evolves quickly, right? So as we see things, we need to be able to adapt and change to that. So people that come in that are super process driven, while process can give us a lot of benefit, can also be a hurdle that we have to overcome with certain people, right? So flexibility is one of the key core values that we look for on the team. If someone comes in with a rigid process that they've done from an editorial or marketing background, for example, and this is the process that they've been following for the past 10 years, that actually may not work for us, because we need to be able to adapt and change. Like, does this work? Let's say we test that email campaign. Did that actually work? No, let's change that. So we need flexibility. That's kind of one of the key things that we look for. I think one of the other things that we've really leaned into heavily is in the beginning of the company, we were kind of desperate for talent. Like we didn't have a name for ourselves. We didn't get a lot of inbound applications. So we started just like putting job postings up and things like that. We would get inbound leads, but not really quality, right? And in the beginning, we were desperate for staff. Like we were opening a retail store. We were like, let's get someone in here. I don't care. Like I need a warm body sitting behind the counter. And that's a typical mistake that a lot of people make. We now have a process where we hire very slow and we fire really fast. So within 30 days to 60 days of a person starting here, we know if they're the right culture fit. We know if they're the right, if they have the right skill sets that they're bringing to the table. We know if they're flexible, if they have some of these tenets that we look for. But our hiring process now takes 2 to 4 weeks at a bare minimum from the moment we meet the candidate. So, once we meet them, we then send them through rounds with other members of the team. So that way we can look at everything from how will they interact with the rest of the team, so on and so forth.
Sounds like you have a really rigid, like really great sort of hiring process, and you're vetting people and you're doing your due diligence. That's awesome. From your unique vantage point at Standard Dose, how do you kind of see your consumer purchasing behavior evolve over the next few years? And how has it really evolved over COVID too? Because you mentioned earlier that, COVID has changed a lot for a lot of brands, from not needing any more fundraising because e-commerce has just, risen. It's been so successful for so many brands, to, how has it really changed your trajectory overall?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us during COVID, we again, like I said, launched a retail store in May of 2019. So we were only open about 8 or 9 months with our physical space before COVID hit. COVID hit, and of course we went into freak out mode kind of immediately. We're like, uh-oh, our store's gone, what happens? Fortunately for us, like the experience that we put into the physical space actually made it where those customers repeat purchase online. So we did an analysis recently, like 90% of our customers who had an in-store physical experience repeat purchased at least once during the pandemic. And so that's a testament to the fact that I think this experience-driven retail has to go hand in hand with a good, solid e-com business. But what that meant is during the pandemic, with more people not sleeping, more people stressed out, more people with gut health issues, more people at home looking for ways to disconnect or ways to kind of have a little bit more mindful moments within the home, we saw a rise into different categories. So that leans heavier into what I mean by flexibility throughout the organization, right? Is during the pandemic, new categories would pop off for us that we had no sales previously in, right? So for example, bath salts. Bath salts were a very low volume item for us. We didn't move a ton of them. We knew they did well like during holiday gifting time, but during the normal, like, in May and June and July, we weren't selling a lot of baths, right? Because it's summer, we were selling natural sunscreens or things like that. But all of a sudden during COVID, people were at home more people were taking baths, and that category blew up for us. So that's what I mean by that flexibility and that adaptability, because suddenly we had no historical data of like 3 years of bath salt sales to kind of measure against. We were like still less than 2 years old. Pandemic hit, and we had to like see those trends happening, and we had to like buy into that inventory quickly, and we had to work with our brand partners to fill more different variety within those categories very quickly. So it took us adapting a lot, but we saw a rise in some of these newer categories that had never been sold before.
That's really amazing. So basically, COVID, new rise of categories. How were you able to sort of jump on the opportunity, find the products, get them produced? Like, what was your thought process around that?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, we're not in the business of kind of making the product, so we didn't have to go through the full pipeline of that, but we do have a really robust vetting process. So every product that we carry, We look at the ingredients that are inside the product. We do independent third-party lab tests on them. We also send products out to focus groups where we learn about efficacy testing. And that process can take about 4 to 6 weeks just from start to finish, just to onboard a new brand.
Yeah.
So we wanted to maintain our standards and our levels there, but we also wanted to make sure that we could, ramp up the speed at which we were bringing on new brands.
Totally.
So we spent a lot of time like hiring and staffing and adding additional staff to our buying team in order to be able to meet that demand so we could buy into those new categories. And we picked priorities every month of new categories that we wanted to focus on.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about your curation process? And totally forgot, I don't know why I even asked that question. You guys have some of the, like, honestly, the best brands in the category. And what's your vetting process? It's super exclusive, a beautiful website. How do you guys typically pick which brands you want to onboard?
So the first goal for us is really we want to elevate the conversation around plants. So we do look at brand, we look at packaging, we look at story they're telling, and we want to make sure that they're elevating it. Sometimes when you get into plant-based ingredients, it can feel very granola or hippie, or when you're looking at products like CBD, they could use a lot of like high puns or kind of weed culture. And what we want to do is really talk about it from a purpose of, this is a medicinal plant that's been used for thousands of years. People have been taking it for different medicinal purposes, and that's what we want to support, right? Or things like turmeric, a lot of Western consumers have no idea what that looks like. And meanwhile, in countries like India, it's been used as an anti-inflammatory to take when you have a cold for many, many years. And so our whole goal around it first is to look at the brand, make sure the brand is telling a similar story that represents what we believe in, which is this elevating the conversation, education-focused lens, and then aesthetically looks pleasing, right? My philosophy is that a brand that's in the natural space should look and feel like a brand that's not in the natural space. So it should sit in your beauty cabinet, and you should just be as happy to show that as you would be like Chanel handbag that you may have in your closet, right? And that feeling shouldn't be bifurcated because suddenly now it's a natural product. So brand is important. And then we look at the ingredients that are inside the product. So when we're looking at ingredients, we look at them on 3 criteria. We have a really robust restricted list of ingredients that we don't share publicly right now because it's kind of our proprietary IP, but we have 3 different categories or lenses that we look at ingredients on. So one is on sustainability. So if it has an ingredient such as palm oil, we ask for additional documentation to make sure that palm oil is sustainably harvested. Then we look at ethical component of the ingredients. So for example, mica typically is mined from child labor and about 90% of the world's supply. So we ask for additional documentation to ensure that it is being mined in an ethical way. And then third is safety. Do the ingredients, do they have links to cancers? Do they have links to other issues that may occur? So those are the first things with ingredients. And then we take that a step further. We ask brands for things which sound kind of silly in this conversation, but are critical in a new, smaller brand. We ask for documentation to ensure that they have insurances. Are the brands, a lot of small indie brands may not have liability insurance, right? So if you as a consumer get hurt and it's a small indie brand, they may have never thought to get insurances. Therefore, if you get hurt, you have no way to even sue them or do anything to them, right? And so that's important that the consumer is protected and our customers protected. Then we take that a step further. We send the product out to third-party labs for testing, where we look at things like pesticides, heavy metals. We want to make sure those are non-existent or below legal limits inside of the products. We then look if it's a product that says like it has CBD, we look that whatever it says on the packaging is actually what's inside the bottle within a 10% difference. And we allow for that 10% because we know that every batch is slightly different. But we want to see it as close to the number that you see on the bottle as possible. And then lastly, we send the product out to focus groups where we learn about efficacy. And that for us is about retention. So when we send it out to a focus group, we want to understand that it works the way it's intended and that people see results from it. So if it's a sleep product, we want to make sure that people slept. So either they slept better or deeper, or it helped them fall asleep better. And so we ask them things like, are you looking for a product that helps you fall asleep, or are you looking at a product to help you stay asleep? Different products. We have different formulas for all of that. And we look for about 70% efficacy in those focus groups. And that allows us to make sure that we have a retention. You try a product from us, you like it, it works, you come back and buy it again. It's as simple as that. And we believe that that focus group testing is part of why we have such great retention metrics. And then lastly, we're always analyzing those brands. So for example, we have a brand right now that we've gotten like 6 or 7 complaints in the past week. We're in deep conversations with them now. They just went through a reformulation. We know that with the brand. And we just told the brand, like, if we get more complaints from this, we're going to have to drop you. And so that's how we're taking the feedback from our customers and applying that into the brands that we carry and deciding when we drop brands based on that. And then in addition to that, we're always looking at new categories. So right now we have a huge focus on women's health. So products that are natural for menopause, menstrual health, prenatal vitamins, so on and so forth. So we're constantly evolving even the assortment and looking at new categories. That's kind of the last part of our buying process, whatever categories we're buying into.
I love that. I mean, that's how you are a trusted source, right? You're super customer centric and you really put the customer's wellness first. It's so important to start with the customer.
Totally. I think for us, it's this whole idea that everyone is wanting to just look better and feel better. That's all we want to do, right? And now there's just this added layer of we want to do that naturally and safely. And so that's the primary goal. As long as we're achieving that, we're meeting the customer's needs.
I love it. So are there any brands, old or new, that have inspired you over the years as you sort of scaled Standard Dose? Any brands or founders you admire? It's really interesting that you take on this approach, and I'm wondering, like, if you had inspiration from someone or other brands.
Yeah, it's funny because I look at brands in many different ways. So obviously I look to the people that have a solid, loyal brand recognition. So, the Nikes of the world and how they've done such a phenomenal job of knowing that the quality of the Nikes is always going to be the same, right? So exactly what you expect from Nike is what you're going to get every time you buy a pair of shoes from them. And then they have the customer service to support that. If you have a problem, they replace it, they fix it. And so I look at some of those old school brands for that purpose. But in addition to that, I mean, from our vetting process, there is no one today that is doing exactly what we do from a process. I've worked with beauty brands who've sold into the Sephoras of the world, into the Groups of the world, and no one is currently doing the vetting process that we do. Many have tried to imitate it and create some parts of it, but no one's doing it the exact way we've done. And what I've taken a lot of that from is actually from my work and my experience working in pharma. Pharma did a phenomenal job not for good of the world, but a phenomenal job in the 80s and 90s of selling stress and anxiety medication, sleep medication, medication for the kid with ADHD. And if you think about, probably all of us growing up, it was, we knew friends or were on things like Ritalin or antidepressants or all of these things that came from pharma. And pharma is kind of required in the nature of pharma to do a lot of these things. So they do focus group testing, they do efficacy testing because they're required by law. That's never been applied to beauty and that's never been applied to naturals. And that's where I kind of take a lot of the leaning from of kind of what I look towards, because if I can take what pharma did that was supporting things that I ethically don't believe in, and I apply that to something really good that I ethically believe in, then we can really kind of change the world.
Yeah. I'm curious specifically, I know we only have a few minutes left, kind of looking over the past 6 months or projecting into the rest of this year, any kind of like exciting wins that you can talk about yet? I'm sure there's other things in the pipeline, whether in the past or upcoming.
Yeah, so really exciting. We just expanded to Europe, launched in the UK in the beginning of this year, late last year, beginning of this year. So that's really exciting as we kind of expand beyond just our US presence and try to bring this to more people. We also have a really amazing partnership that'll be rolling out across the country this year, at the end of this year in Q4. So we're going to be getting to get access to cities that are not just New York, LA, right? Those are our hubs today of wellness, but I think, this is a broader conversation that goes across the US and touches in cities like Dallas and Atlanta, Georgia, and Raleigh, North Carolina. And especially during COVID, you see that more and more people moved from hubs of LA and New York and have moved to these smaller cities, and are still looking for some of the same things. So really excited for that. Also really excited for, we're launching big thing with a lot of our healers. So we do a lot of workshops. So we do things like on intimacy, Ayurvedic practitioners. We do a lot of stuff with Chinese herbalists. And so we'll be launching a bigger network with them as well to help solve these needs.
Very cool. I love it. I think that's
Holistic approach too, especially with everything opening back up. It's great. It just ties everything together. The omni-channel.
Totally.
Really. Yeah.
Totally.
Fantastic.
I love it. I think this is all the time we have. I don't want to get too much over it, but again, Anthony, this was fantastic. We should do a follow-up soon.
For sure.
Really want to dig into, have a lot of questions around international expansion that I'm sure you're working through.
Yeah, for sure. We'll offline on it too. But yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And great meeting you, Steph.
Great meeting you, Anthony. I'll shoot you a follow-up. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.